Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Today I'm going to be doing a flip through of the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, I think it's Wildemount. This is the latest book put out by Wizards of the Coast for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and actually Wizards of the Coast were the ones who sent this to me for the purposes of doing a review, so I do want to thank them for that. It'll probably be a few days before I get a chance to do a full-on review of the book, so I actually haven't really had a whole lot of opportunity at this point yet to really look through the book in much detail. I've sort of glanced at a few things, and but I don't feel comfortable enough to make an opinion of it at this point in time. The one thing I will say is that I sort of had mixed feelings about this book when it was announced, for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I feel like it's kind of soon from the last campaign setting book that they released, which was the Eberron one back in November, and there were no other like D&D books in between, so it just I don't know, just feels like it might be stealing the thunder of the Eberron book just a little bit. And the other thing is that I'm actually not personally into Critical Role. I know a lot of people love it, and I don't have anything against it. It's just not really of interest to me. I've tried watching a couple of the episodes, and it just never really did anything for me personally. But not a knock against them or anything like that. I don't want to make it sound like I think that it's a horrible thing or anything like that. It's just not of interest to me personally. But the world itself, the campaign settings that they do, that could be a whole other matter, because this is something that you can probably, or hopefully, and I'll know much better within the next few days, if this is something that you can really enjoy without knowing the source material a whole lot and just being able to base it off this book. There was another like open gaming license product that they did, campaign setting as well, so I think they're both on the same world, just separate continents. But anyway, let's just go ahead and have a flip through here. But first, this is the map that comes with the book itself. It's just the main continent there that this particular setting takes place in. The other side is just blank, which is a little disappointing. It would have been kind of cool to see something on the other side, but I'm not going to hold that against them, because I can't remember if the Eberron one had something on it on its other side or not at this point. But anyway, we'll just go ahead and start flipping through. So the first things that we have here is just a little preface, sort of welcoming you to the setting. And what's actually kind of interesting is that you actually go quite a while before you get into the player character options, which is usually the first part of the book. So as a first impression goes, I actually kind of like the fact that you get a feel for the world. If you're going cover to cover, you get a feel for the world before you just start getting into the player character options. So that's, I think, a really cool way of doing it, actually. So like I said, at this point in time, I haven't had a chance to look through it too much yet. The one thing I do actually like is we get into sort of like the Pantheon section here, is it has a really cool blend of, honestly, some of my favorite deities from both the Greyhawk and Forgotten Realm setting. Mainly on, like, it has Pelor, has Corlan, Bahamut, Moradin. The Raven Queen was the one that I really liked being included here, as well as Melora. But on the evil side, this is where, like, my favorite part of it comes in from what I've read so far, because you have Osmodius, you have like Tiamat, and ones that you kind of expect or that you see normally. But then we have Bane, which is my favorite evil deity of all time, or he's at least tied with Vecna, who was also included in here. So I just think that that's really cool. And then you have Torog, that I was first introduced to in the 4th edition Nentir Vale setting. So it's really cool to have just a really interesting mix of the deities. So it's a little bit of a melting pot, I guess, for like the Forgotten Realms and Greyhawk world. So I think that that's just really cool overall. Chapter 2, we get into the factions and societies. So again, this is a part that I haven't had a chance to read as of yet, but I do like one thing just looking at the art here. Some of these pages I haven't even had a chance to look at all yet. But I wanted to get something out where the release date went by. But I do kind of like that looks like a D12, just because I think the D12 just is the oft forgotten die when it comes to like the different sets. So it's just I don't know if that's purposeful or not, but I just think it's kind of cool. So again, just going through all of this, and like I said, I will have my review hopefully within a week or so. I do have another review that I do need to do first, but just wanted to do like the flip through here. And now we're into the Gazetteer, which is sort of the meat and potatoes of your campaign setting. So this is where you start learning about the different political regions or cities, nations, kingdoms, whatever you may have here. And it gives you, actually I kind of like the breakdown as well. So we're just going to take a look at this one here. We'll zoom in a little bit. So we have Nico Darnas. Probably said that wrong, but regardless. So it gives you your population breakdown. So 68% humans, 13% halflings, dwarves, and other races. Gives you your government, and then defense, commerce, and organizations. So defense says a respectable army remains stationed within there to dissuade empire foolishness. The only thing that would have been kind of nice, and I don't think any of the other campaigns have done this, so again, it's not something that I would hold against it. But when it talks about like an army defending, a city or a nation, it would be nice to have the number of like the breakdown of at least what the size of the army is. But again, I don't think that's something that's been in the other books, so I'm not going to view that as a negative here. But it is still cool that it has that there even in the first place. Commerce is always nice to know. So this one tells you who the primary trade partner is, and is renowned as a city where foreign travelers can find respite and entertainment. So it gives you a little idea of what it's like there. So I just kind of like those aspects being just shown there in the opening part of the description. So I always think that that's cool and helps quite a bit when you're trying to make up, if you're especially in this one where I guess the continent itself is currently at war, as opposed to other settings that are usually either fresh off of a war or there haven't been any major large scale battles or wars for a while. This one's actually sort of in the midst of it. So having that defense information, of course, is going to be useful for that. And just really nice map here. I actually really like that the city map. So the tumble downs, beaded alley, the crescents, the gilded esplanade, larboard light. Okay, so let's go through the Morrow Valley. So I will say that I'm interested to read up on this world, even though I'm not necessarily the fan of where it comes, like the show that it's sort of derived from. It still looks really interesting, and flipping through, like I said, some of these pages I'm seeing for the first time, and it does have me intrigued. I learned my lesson with the Ravnica setting, to try to not prejudge a setting or just sort of have that idea in my head that if I don't care about where the inspiration came from, that it's going to be a product that I'm not interested in. Because the Ravnica setting actually ended up being pretty cool. So this is something that I think is going to be along those lines as well. Oop. This is it's also a pretty thick book as well, at 300 pages, which is certainly a larger size for the D&D supplements. It's about the right size for the campaign settings, like we had with the Eberron one. So again, it's really nice. And I also have to say I love the fact that you've got like multiple cities really well mapped out, instead of just focusing on one or two. So I would say that that's another point sort of in favor of this. Alright. Again, some really nice artwork too. Which there usually is, so I actually really like that one. With the volcano. The fiery volcano looms over the snow-filled, or sorry, the snow-covered Flotek Alps. And I'm going to butcher all the names, I apologize for that. White Dragon, that does look like recycled art, unfortunately, but you know, that's something that happens in these books anyway. But I will say, I mean, the artwork is actually doing a really good job of piquing my interest, I have to admit. And it looks like it does each region pretty thoroughly as well, actually, because we are now 142 pages in the chapter. Geez, when did this chapter begin? Gazetteer, oops, factions and societies. See, this started on page 59, and we're still going, so it looks like it's going to give you a decent amount of information, which is great. The Cauldron Sea. Again, nice artwork there. Message in a bottle. Okay, so yeah, it's about 100 pages of just information on the setting itself, and we're now just getting into the character options section of this setting book, and this is on page 161. The one thing that I did notice when just sort of going through the list of races that are added here is that there is a lot of overlap with races that have appeared in things like Volo's Guide to Monsters. I can't remember which creatures were in Mordekainen's Tome of Foes as player character races, but I know like we have the Goblinoids that were just in the Eberron book as well. Goliaths, Aarakocra, Aasimars, Furbogs, the Genasi, the Kenku, and Tortles. And a lot of those, so those are all sort of reprinted from other books, like the Aarakocra and the Goliath, and I think even the Genasi were originally introduced way back with the Princes of the Apocalypse adventure, which was, I think, one of the... I can't remember, I think that was the second campaign that was released for 5th edition, so that's going back quite a few years. Like I said, goblins were just in the Eberron setting as well, but they were also in Volo's Guide to Monsters, I'm pretty sure, as well as like the Aasimar. So at first I was like, well, that's kind of, well, it just seems like a lot of overlap. But the more I thought about it, the more it sort of makes sense, because at the same time that, you know, I have those printed in several other books, not necessarily everyone's going to have that. And people starting the hobby or starting to get into it may not necessarily have everything either. So at first it was something that I thought was sort of a waste of space. But the more I think about it, the more it absolutely does make sense to reprint some of these things in here from the perspective of that way you don't have to own multiple books, or if you don't own multiple books, you can still have access to the information. And I don't know what the legality is for this book in Adventurers League, but by incorporating all of these races into this one book, then that could be your +1 resource. For example, like the Tortle race was retroactively added to Xanathar's Guide to Everything as a race that you could associate with that book, even though it absolutely did not appear in that book whatsoever. So I think this might be a way to sort of fix that and put everything together. So, you know, I think that that's totally fine. But we do also get a few new sub-races for existing existing races. The dwarves, unfortunately, don't get anything. They don't get any, like, new sub-races or anything like that, which is a bit of a shame. But with the elves, we do get the pallid elves. So pallid elves are mystical and insightful people with skin as pale as the surface of the largest moon that this campaign world has. I guess it's got two different moons. One sort of akin to our own, but then there's another one which is sort of this like glowing, or it's the not glowing. Sorry, it's like a faint sort of reddish star. But so we have the Paladin Elves. They get a Wisdom increase in addition to the Dex for the regular elf. Incisive Stance. You have you gain advantage on Intelligence, Investigation, and Wisdom Insight checks. It gives you a few cantrips. You get the Light cantrip. You get the Invisibility spell when you reach 5th level. So sort of like how the Drow have their Drow magic. This is stuff based off of their association, I guess, with the moon. And then you have the Sea Elf, which I want to say we saw before. I could be wrong there. And then we get some Halflings. We have the Halfling subrace of the Latsudan Halfling. So they get +1 to their Wisdom as well. Child of the Wood. So the Druidcraft cantrip. When you reach 3rd level, you can cast Entangle spell. And then when you reach 5th level, you can get Spike Growth. So that's pretty cool. Then Timberwalk ability checks made to track. You have disadvantage. And you can move across difficult terrain made of non-magical plants and undergrowth without spending extra movement. So that's pretty cool there. And then we get into our newer races, so the Aarakocra, like we had before, the Aasimar, which I think is just straight from, I think Mordecai's Tome of Foes was the one that had these guys, if I recall correctly. It's honestly been a while since I looked through those books, because when I run 5th edition, I do it publicly, although that's on hold for now. But when I do, I try to minimize the amount of stuff that I take, so I haven't really been able to take advantage of those books as much as I would probably normally like to. But I think that this is just a straight reprint. The Dragonborn do get a couple of different variant subraces, which is actually kind of cool to see a subrace for the non-standard humanoid races. So this one you have the Drakenblood. So they get Intelligence +2, Charisma +1. They get Dark Vision, which was something that was missing from the regular Dragonborn. They get Forceful Presence, so you can use your understanding of creative diplomacy or intimidation to guide a conversation in your favor. When you make an Intimidate or Persuasion check, you can do so with advantage. Once you use this trait, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. And then the Dragonborn, the other Dragonborn variant is the Revenant. So I guess it's not dragon, it's sub-races, but like just variant versions of the race as a whole. So this one here, these ones have no tails. And then they get Strength +2, Con +1, Dark Vision, which feels like that's sending sort of a message to the original Dragonborn. Something that I would house rule in to give them. But it says they get Vengeful Assault, so when you take damage from a creature in range of a weapon you are wielding, you can use your reaction to make an attack with the weapon against creature. Once you use this trait, you can't do so again until you finish a short or long rest. So it's pretty cool. Then we got the Verbogs. And then the Genasi, which I feel like are straight reprints as well in terms of their abilities. The Gnomes don't get anything. Then we have the Goblins, so Bugbear, Goblin, Hobgoblin, Goliath. Kenku, I'm pretty sure Kenku was in one of the other books as well. I want to say Volo's Guide. The Tabaxi, for those that are into that sort of thing. Tieflings, I don't think they get much here either. And then, of course, you get the Tortles, which I already know that I have a player who wants to make a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, so in the next campaign that I run. But then we get into this sort of racial, I almost want to say template. So it's not a unique race in of itself, but the hollow ones. And I'll talk more about them when I do the actual review. But these are essentially people that have died and have been brought back by some force. Like they typically come from one area that's sort of spell scarred to begin with, but it's just I like the idea of it, and I love the artwork for it. Although the description does say that they're not that easy to tell apart, I would probably change that and actually make them have like the gray, pale skin and like the milky white eyes, just because I think that looks a lot cooler. But I do really like them. So they don't age. They get there's no effects for aging that work on them. Cling to life. When you make a death saving throw and roll a 16 or higher, you regain 1 hit point. So this isn't something that you want to pass out to everybody, but it is something that can be kind of cool. Revenants, so you retain your creature type, yet you register as undead to spells and other effects that detect the presence of the undead creature type. And then unsettling presence, as an action you gain, as an action you can unsettle a creature you see within 15 feet. The target has disadvantage on the next saving throw it makes within the next minute. Constructs, undead, and creatures that can't be frightened are immune to this feature. And then you have to finish a long rest to use it again. So they're not overpowered or anything, but I love the design of them, basing it off this artwork. And I just think it's sort of a cool idea, especially if you're running a game where someone is really attached to their character and something bad happens. It's sort of a built-in way to bring them back, but have them be sort of affected by that in some way. And you can sort of base stories around that. So I really think that's really cool. Then we get into our subclasses. So this is something that I haven't really read a whole lot of yet either. But we have subclass for the fighter called the Echo Knight. And this says, a mysterious and feared frontline warrior of the Kryn dynasty, the Echo Knight has mastered the art of using... so there's 2 different types of, I guess, magical energy. So the Dunamis and Dunamancy, I guess is what it says there, is what it's called, or just Dunamancy. Anyway, you use that to aid them in battle, surrounded by echoes of their own might. And so essentially they sort of create this like shadow clone of themselves that can appear within 15 feet of them. And what's kind of cool about that is if you have multiple attacks, you can alternate, or you can choose which attacks come from which version of yourself, like the shadow version or the echo version of you, or yourself. And you can sort of split that up. I believe you also get an extra attack just for having it out there, which makes sense. And you also have the ability to swap spaces with the creature, I believe. Or that might be a higher level version of it anyway, but it's just sort of a neat idea. They only have like 1 hit point, so if they take damage they do disappear. But I just think that is a cool idea, and I kind of like the concept behind it. It might end up being a total nightmare to have as a player in my campaign, but I can say at least at this point that I think it is sort of an interesting design. And then we have the wizards or specialties, I guess you can say. So there's the chronergy magic, which is sort of affecting time. So you can sort of create these like time bubbles. One of my favorite features that they have here is the arcane abeyance. So when you cast a spell using a slot of 4th level or lower, you can condense the spell's magic into a mote. So this spell is frozen in time at the moment of the casting and can be held within the gray bead for 1 hour. So if the bead is destroyed, it vanishes in a flash of light and the thing is lost, so if something happens to it. But you can also use the bead to cast the spell later. So it's something that, you could cast something, have it just sort of held in this sort of stasis, and if something really bad happens, or like let's just say the characters get captured or something like that, you might be able to secret that little bead away and then bring it back out to cast some sort of spell effect. Anyway, I just think it's a cool idea. And then you have the graviturgy magic. Can you tell that recording these videos, having to do these late at night, is starting to take its toll on me? But it's sort of another interesting concept as well, which I'll get into more. And when I do the actual review, I'll sort of go into more detail about the new and unique elements that were added to this book, or to the D&D game system from this book. Alright, so continuing on, we get into the Denim Ani Spells. I haven't really read too many of these yet, but apparently this is sort of a new type of magic, that these spells are meant to be sort of rare, so they're meant to... they're meant to be only accessed by, you know, a specific type of character. So this would be the wizards that actually have access to the chronergy or graviturgy magic of the spells. So it actually gives you like the asterisks and tells you which one of those subclasses of wizard gets access to these particular spells. It is something that you can give out, but it's suggested that you do it very carefully and very rarely. So it's not something that any wizard should have access to. So one thing to keep in mind if you do start running this campaign is that the new spells in here are designed to fully to be used with the specific subclass of wizard that's introduced in this book. And if you want to go outside of that, just sort of be careful about how you do it, I guess, and don't overdo it. So like I said, I haven't really read through that too much, although I must say this artwork here has me rather intrigued with the spell Reality Break. So I'll save that for the actual review, though. And then the Heroic Chronicle. So again, this is a section that I haven't really looked at too much yet, but it does say is a system that allows players and dungeon masters to work together to build a compelling character story. It even allows characters to gain additional proficiencies, magic item spells, or feats. So it would be sort of a way of, I guess, creating characters or using the background information to help flesh out your character. So this is something that I might actually, when I finish reading through it, I might actually do a video applying it and creating a character sort of using the stuff that's in here, and we'll see sort of how that goes. So for the moment, I really don't know much about this, so we'll see how that sort of shapes up. All right. And then we get some new backgrounds. So we have the Grinners. So Golden Grin began in the far-off land of Tal Doré, which I think is the other setting book that's been released, but it was not officially licensed by Wizards. So it's relatively peaceful republic, and some Grinners have grown restless while waiting for tyranny to raise its ugly head again. Okay, so they were trading secret messages through a network of bards and minstrels to undermine the Iron-Fisted King's authoritarian rule. So I guess these are sort of champions of freedom, it looks like. Again, I'd have to read a bit more thoroughly here. And then we get into some adventures. So I'm actually not going to spoil any of this stuff here, because I don't want people to see, anyone who might be a player, to see what we have in here. But it's a pretty lengthy section as well, and I think it gives you 4 separate adventures that you can run. I would presume, because I haven't really read them yet, but I would presume at different levels, perhaps. Did you? Or maybe they're just all introductory ones. I'm not quite sure from 1st to 3rd. Yeah, they might all. Well, all right. Maybe I lied a little bit. Let's just sort of go back and see if we can find the beginning of some of these. Just to see where they get it. It looks like they also take advantage of the... I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. I'll save that, I guess, for the review. But it looks like they do sort of prefer the milestone advancement system, which, truthfully, it's what I've been using for a long time now. And then we get some magic items. Again, really nice artwork there. So we get a few different things there. And then the bestiary, so the new creatures. Doesn't look like there are any like unique NPCs included in here, which it would have been sort of nice to have some of those. They may be tucked in other parts of the book, so I'm not going to say too much at this point in time, just in case I am wrong. But just looking through the bestiary, these do look like just like standard creatures. And then we have the glossary, and the index, and then the set we had where the map pulls out in the back here. So that's my flip through of the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount or Wildemount. Just let me know in the comments below how I'm supposed to say that, so I don't keep screwing it up. But so far, just from looking through it, I'm intrigued. And considering that I was sort of, I guess, ambivalent towards the book when it was first introduced or first announced, it's definitely a step in the right direction. So I'm interested to read more about the world itself. I like the subclasses that were introduced. Again, we'll see how much of a nightmare that fighter subclass is. It to actually like have in game, because I know some players that would definitely take advantage of that and probably use it to make my life a bit of a nightmare. But regardless, I'm really looking forward to getting to read through the rest of the book. So, like, so this wasn't meant to be a review. This isn't meant to be like my final opinion or anything like that. I just wanted to get a flip through of the book so you can kind of see some of the things that are in there, get a feel for how the book is structured, and we'll go from there. So I should have the full review out within the next week or so. Should have plenty of time to sort of read through it and give my full review then. But for the time being, I have to say that there's a lot in here that looks really, really interesting. I love the artwork, and I'm actually like to the point where I really want to learn, like legitimately am interested enough to really read more into this. Probably won't change my opinion of the show Critical, like the Critical Role series, but I am looking forward to diving deeper into this book. So in the meantime, let me know in the comments below if you've picked this up, what some of your favorite aspects of the book are. And hopefully you guys come back for my review in a few days. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks again to Wizards of the Coast for sending this to me, because otherwise this is something that I probably would have overlooked, and it kind of seems like that would be a bit of a shame. So we'll come back for the final verdict. But thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Take care.